Thank you for having me. I'm Alexandra Musser, and here we are in the last part of Lent. And so what Lent means, Lent refers to the 40 days and 40 nights that Jesus spent walking through the wilderness in order to prepare for his ministry. And so during this period of time, in some faiths, people give things up. Really, in the metaphysical interpretation of Lent, we're not giving up meat, we're not giving up drinking, we're not giving up any of these things. We are rather giving up our impure thoughts, those things that we know that we should be getting rid of in order to create and make room for the new. So the next slide, please. So Kevin was born a Baptist, and he was raised a Baptist, and he moved about in the middle of his life to primarily a Catholic community. And so he was not used to practicing Lent, and he was just wonderful at barbecuing. Now, the majority of his Catholic neighbors were practicing Lent and were eating things like tuna fish and fish every Friday, and they would just get the aroma of his barbecues, and they were just so fearful that they themselves might be tempted to stop eating the canned tuna and go over and ask for a piece of barbecue. Nothing smells as exciting as a barbecue, as a roasting steak. I mean, that's why we know that in the olden days, people used to offer burnt offerings to the gods because it smelled so good. They thought, well, if we like it so well, they must really, really love it. And so his neighbors got together and they said, well, look, we're not only fearful for his soul, but we are fearful for our own because this is so tempting. We could easily just find ourselves just falling off the Lent wagon and starting to eat meat instead of tuna fish. So they went and talked to him and they said, listen, Kevin, would you consider converting to Catholicism? You know, we actually think that this is a better path for you to go, and you'll be much happier as a Catholic. And, you know, we do practice Lent, which is a period when we don't eat meat. So when next year comes around, we're going to ask you to please participate in this practice with us. And so he said, well, maybe. So he went, he spoke to the priest, and he came to see that it was a beautiful religion and he could benefit from some of their practices, and he agreed to convert. And so the priest took some holy water and sprinkled it on Kevin and said, Kevin, my son, you were born a Baptist, you were raised a Baptist, you are now a Catholic. And so next year Lent rolls around and the neighbors are smelling steak again, barbecue. And they're wondering, oh my God, did he forget about the practice of Lent? You know, they decide to look over the fence to see what Kevin is doing. And there's Kevin roasting his steak, and he's taking a little bit of water and sprinkling it over the barbecue and saying, you were born a cow, you were raised a cow, you are now tuna. And the next one, please. So we in Unity and New Thought look at Lent and many of the things and practices in the Bibles and the story in the metaphysical context. What does this mean? That means that we look at it as a spiritual metaphor for a practice. And so in Lent, what we think is that this is a genuine call to inner renewal, to releasing what doesn't serve us, and to bringing forth in the spring of our existence, which happens to correspond to where we are in Lent, that newness, that budding forth, those new blossoms of spiritual awareness. And so while the Fillmores were proponents of fasting and prayer as tools for spiritual transformation, and many people do fast from food and from different practices, you know, that's fine. What we really want to fast from is those thoughts, those feelings, those emotions, and possibly foods or whatever else that is going on in our lives that does not serve us. And so we fast from those negative thoughts, the chatter in our mind, those things that we just tell ourselves about others, about ourselves. And so another thing that we're going to consider about Lent, why 40 days? Other than Jesus walked in the wilderness for a period of 40 days. 40 is a metaphysical number because it means a very long time. So there were 40 years out in the desert with Moses, 40 days for Jesus' walking in the wilderness. The term quarantine, which means to isolate for a period of time, and it doesn't have anything to do with the number 40, comes from the Latin word 40. And so when we say that we're going to do something for a period of 40 days or 40 years, or in a spiritual sense, we mean for a long time. Why for a long time? Because that's when we reestablish a pattern. We have to create that pathway that settles itself, that with the first wind is not going to be covered up by the sands. It's an indelible pathway that we have created through a long practice. And so what this means is that we are to live this Lenten spirit with integrity and to align ourselves with the Christ principle. Charles Fillmore wrote a book entitled Keeping True Lent. And he teaches us practices in there where we align ourselves with the Christ principles of love, of forgiveness, of truth, of compassion, and generosity. Do we do this? Okay, we're done?
No, go ahead.
Oh, I apologize. In New Thought, what are the Christ principles? They refer to the divine qualities that Jesus embodied. And these exist in each and every single one of us because we are all created in the likeness and image of the divine. Therefore, we all have these God qualities within ourselves. Now, the name Christ was not Jesus' last name. It is symbolic for what he achieved, the pinnacle of light, the pinnacle of human-made divine. He achieved his divine purpose, his divine self, the God as man. And so what did we do with that idea? Love and compassion. We practice unconditional love. We know that Jesus practiced unconditional love. He modeled it for us. Faith and power, using faith as a creative force to align with divine will and to manifest our highest good. We must believe in those things that are unseen because they are known within the core of our true spiritual being. God knows that.